Welcome to Oink Time Podcast. I'm Jen Carnovale.
And me is Ben Ellwood.
And this week we chatted to the awesome Jamie Kilstein.
US stand-up comedian, man. This one is fucking great. We talk about polarised rhetoric in the 21st century. We talk #MeToo, politics, public shaming, suicide, and online witch hunts.
All of that, come check it out. If you want to contact us, of course you can, at OinkTimePod on Twitter. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate it, share it with everyone you've ever met. Tell all your friends, it helps. If you want to contact us to say how cool we are, it's oinktime@gmail.com. We need to, of course, thank our wonderful producer, Sean. Our theme song from Wow Wow Wow. And, of course, to Young Henry's Brewery for supplying us with wonderful ciders and beers. If you want to get drunk, drink their alcohol. It's delicious. Thank you, Young Henry's.
And enjoy our conversation about progression with Jamie Kilstein.
Progression.
Progression. Way too much time on that.
That's like a big thing with improv, because improv's very culty, like UCB and stuff like that. So the best improvisers I know, like Zach Woods and people like that, when kids will ask them advice, they're just like, go live. Like, don't hang out at this fucking club every day. Don't hang out around the school. Like, you can't just do scenes on improv. Just like, you can't just like pander to comics, right? It's like, go to a fucking museum. Go fall in love. Go like, you know, go walk around. Go like shit like that, where it's like sometimes you get so like sucked into it, you know?
What do you do during the day?
Me?
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
Well, I just started doing low key. My friend, I have a couple friends in the WWE. Oh yeah, do you want me to sound check?
It's just
see
one
what
of those
I'm
ones
talking?
that just starts.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends in the WWE, and they hooked me up with a pro wrestling school in Los Angeles, which I've always like secretly wanted to do since I was like a kid.
Wait, you're a wrestling teacher?
Yeah, no. I started like training.
Can I just say, holy shit, of all the things I thought you were going to say, this is not it. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is the first this is the first time I've mentioned it. Where like when I swear to God, when I was a kid, I've been thinking about this a lot because I've only been doing it for like a month. But when I was a kid, my dad, literally when my dad was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, got you covered, Pops. I either want to do comedy, play in a band, or be a professional wrestler. He should have killed himself. And so those were my plans. I did like backyard wrestling and like all that shit. And we weren't allowed to watch wrestling in the house, so we would like put so we would like put a blanket over the TV, like that was our cover. Like you could clearly see what we were doing, and even if you couldn't see what we were watching, it's like, why are there children watching TV with a blanket over the television? And we would have our little heads in there, and I was obsessed with it. And I'm just now like, I'm 36, I'm too old to be doing it, but I'm also 36, and I just had this realization where like this is the first couple of months I've been single, like actually single, and I was just kind of like, oh, I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
And because worst comes to worst, I fail, but I do something I want. So I'm gonna do that. And I'm gonna go fucking wrestle. So that's what I do. And I've been training like jiu-jitsu and MMA pretty seriously for a while, and like I help coach in my downtime. So so it's not like I'm just like a fucking 36-year-old comic being like, I'm gonna jump off that ring.
Hey, we know plenty of people who are like that. It's fine.
Bro, at least you're actually participating in it and not just jacking off over a picture of The Undertaker on your wall.
Nah, I've never liked The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Never liked The Undertaker.
That's the only wrestler I know.
I did when I was little.
I was going to say Hulk Hogan, but it's very...
I was just like, man, how gross. I jack off to Shawn Michaels on my wall.
Yeah, there's that weird thing that happens after you break up with someone and then the heartbreak settles, and then you have that like, not euphoric, but that moment where you're like, I'm free. Yeah, and even if it's still painful, you're like, I can do all that shit that I wasn't going to do. Yeah, or just like pursue avenues that you'd subconsciously closed off for one reason or another when you were with someone.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you don't want to like blame that person. I mean, my last girlfriend, and I still love her to death, but she was like clinically like jealous, like not okay, like admitted it in the breakup where you know I stopped hanging out with girlfriends. I couldn't go to yoga because she assumed like I would just like me. It was really bad. And so with her it was like an actual I can do things again, I can see my friends again, I can do stuff like that. But even relationships before, you don't realize how much you compromise subconsciously. And sometimes, by the way, like you feel like for me it was like, I'm being such a good guy. What's like, well, not if you're gonna be like a passive aggressive cunt about it when like you can't go to do things, you know? And for me I realized that sometimes I gave stuff up to like try to be nice and try to be a good partner, but sometimes like what I've been realizing recently, because this is like literally the first couple months that I've said no to like dates or sex or being in a relationship. And usually I think the reason I got into relationships I shouldn't have been in, usually I'm still so self-conscious from high school or whatever that I'm just so happy to be there. And just like I assume it's a mistake. I just assume there was like a paperwork shuffle somewhere. And so like, my ex-wife was just really fucking smart. And I'm like, well, I'm dumb. So this is great, right? And my jealous ex was like the most beautiful girl I ever saw, where when she came up to me, I was like, am I standing in like a hot person spot? Like, it just seems so, like she told me on day one, she's like, I think this is a good first date thing. I was like, what are you the worst at in relationships? I'll tell you what I'm the worst at.
That's a great first date thing.
Right? And then if you think, not like a fucking Tinder date, but like if you think it's going to go somewhere, and then you can be like, then we can like help each other get over it. Or if we do it to each other, we won't take it personally right away, and we can like kind of walk our way through it. And she literally said, I get really jealous, sometimes over nothing, and then I get mean. And I was like, I'm in.
Marry me.
I've played this game before.
Marry me. We moved in within 3 months. Well, because in my head, I'm like, if you're jealous, I'm not gonna look at another girl. Again, I'm so fucking happy. You are so much hotter than me that I'm not gonna give you. But when it's psychological like that, or it's really deep seated, it's gonna happen no matter what. And then it's even harder. Like if she saw me, or if like a girl texted me, like an ex, I can explain that. But when it's my guy friend and she's convinced that like I switched the name and like when shit gets so crazy, you're like, how do I defend this?
But at that point, it's not even jealous anymore. Like I've had exes where it's like, a human being with a vagina has walked into my field of vision, and I am the great betrayer. I had an ex who was jealous of my mother, as though I was having some kind of...
See, that's gross.
It wasn't like you're having sex with your mother, or that you're having an affair with your mother, but it's like, this is another woman.
Why do you have to call her when I'm with...
This is a woman monopolizing your time, and that's my time. But it's not even jealousy at that point. It is a pathological mental illness.
Yeah, totally. Why do you think... Because I've been trying to figure out why I'm attracted to those people. Part of me thinks it's just that lack of confidence, and I just go for it.
What do you need to be needed?
Yeah, I was going to say, you feel needed.
Yeah.
You feel so needed. Yeah. And it's like, even though it's so fucked up and you feel bad a lot of the time, it's still like they're saying stuff to you where they're literally saying to you, I need you to just be with me because you mean so much to me.
That's really interesting.
And it's so fucked up, but a part of you is fed by it because you're like, they need me.
Well, and you're also if they're this jealous, I never have anything to worry about, right? Even though a lot of times jealous people are the ones like cheating.
Yeah, see, I always grew up thinking that, where it was like the people who are that jealous and that paranoid are usually like that because they're doing fucked up stuff.
I mean, I'll tell you this, I'm never going to be remotely jealous again because I've never been on the other end of that. Like my big attraction... I mean, accidental attractions is like girls who are like kind of mean to me. And that's the thing I'm really trying
What's
to
that
like.
about?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I don't really know.
In what way? As in you were looking at them, you bitch.
No,
or not bitch.
No, not even. I mean, that would be hilarious.
You sassy hoe.
If I could only date a sassy jealous lady, that would be the fucking best. I'd be like, this is unhealthy, but also super cute.
I think for me, when I was with someone that was super jealous, it was a validation of that little fat teenager that I always think that I am.
That's
Where all of a sudden
my
it's
thing,
like,
man.
I wish that when I was in high school, when I was in high school, every single year I was in love with a different girl.
Me too. They were all my friends.
Yeah. They were always,
I was a virgin till like 17, 18.
Dude, I was a virgin till I was 21.
Yeah.
And it was always that thing of like, why can't I find a guy like you? It's like, I'm a guy like me.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
It's me.
And I always used to say, I'm like the gay best friend. You know, the heterosexual gay best friend.
Yep.
And so, I went through high school that kind of like liking the girl, loving the girl by mid-year, and by end of year, finally working up all the courage to go, I think we have a connection, and them doing that whole just like, no, friends. We're friends.
Yeah.
So then, as an adult, to suddenly have someone who's like, I fucking love you, and I want to burn the fucking world down with you, and I just want you, and I don't want you to look at anyone else. It is extremely validating.
You're like, do that. It's cool.
Yeah.
No,
but it's so sick, and it's a zero-sum game, and it really leads to, in my case, it led to a pathological death spiral.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was really rough with me. I mean, the mean thing, though, you're probably right with the jealousy thing. The mean thing, I just wonder if I just didn't think I deserved better. Like, well, we were talking about, you guys asked me if I drank before the show, and I've actually just stopped drinking for a month. Because, my friends were doing that sober October thing. And I was like, I'll do that. And I wasn't getting like, blackout drunk. I would drink on the weekends, and I would go on Tinder dates and have like 2 drinks. But so I was like, this will be easy. And even with that, I'm going to stick with it. Because I stopped, and 2 weeks in, I realized I was like, I suddenly didn't want to go on these Tinder dates. And I was like, oh, drinking was just making me do shit I don't want to do. Yeah. So I would rather like work out, or I would rather be at home like reading or hang out with my cat or like whatever, writing. And I've gotten so much fucking done in this entire month. But I quit drinking very publicly, and you were saying like, and probably pretentiously, 3 years ago, or no, sorry, I was sober for 3 years. It was years ago, because I thought I was an alcoholic. Not only that, I wrote a piece that went viral. I was on NPR talking about like having like issues with like food issues, like an eating disorder, and being an alcoholic.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Los Angeles, I was with all my friends, and I was like, I think I can have a drink, which is a death spiral for alcoholics, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had a drink, and it was fine. And I don't think I've been like drunk for like a year or two. And I was like, what the fuck? Am I not an alcoholic? Now, my mom's an alcoholic, so I always had that in the back of my mind, right? Like, it's in my family. I saw it like pretty much destroy like our childhood, and she's good now. But I realized that, and again, I don't want to pin the blame on really anyone but me, so I'll try to, if I mention exes, it's not like because of them, but I realized that...
It's all part of the tapestry.
Yeah, I realized that I was really, really depressed, and, in a marriage that wasn't working, and I didn't feel loved, and I didn't have a lot of my own friends, it was very much like our circle, and so I was getting like suicidal for the first time.
While you were married?
Yep. And I realized that, and so I was like, well, I drink. And what ruined my childhood? There's this great, like, I don't go to AA, but a bunch of my friends do. I think it's like an AA phrase. If it's hysterical, it's historical.
Yeah.
They're really good at catchy phrases.
They love
I'm not like
catchy
a huge
phrases.
fan of it.
Like, clarify that. What does that mean?
If you're doing something batshit, it's
a great story.
It's rooted in your past.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? If it's hysterical, it's historical. And so, they do catchy well.
They love catchphrases.
I don't know if they do sobriety well, but they do catchy well. And... So I just naturally assumed, like, I'm used to playing the role of the fuck up, just like I'm used to playing the role of the fat best friend. So, like, I've friend zoned myself on Tinder dates. I have, like, it's ridiculous. And, but with the drinking, I just naturally assumed it must be all my fault. I am the broken one. I am the one who ruins things. So instead of being like, maybe the relationship doesn't work, maybe it's 50-50, it's like, it's got to be because I drink like 2 drinks a night or whatever. And so I just thought I was a fucking alcoholic like my mom.
Well, also, I feel like that's an easier step to come to mentally is like all the pieces that you just described. It's way easier to say, you know what, I'm a problem drinker. I'm an alcoholic instead of maybe I'm in the wrong relationship and maybe my heart is going to break and maybe I'm going to break someone's heart that I love. Yep. It's way easier to go, hey, I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to nip this in the butt.
Because if you're an alcoholic, what is it, right? It's like, I don't drink that cup of something.
And it's problem drinking. I mean, anyone, there's heaps of times in my life I could have been described as an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah.
But it's...
Thanks, man. He was there. But there's like...
I've seen it.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like everyone...
It's tangible.
It's
not like, oh, I have to examine who I am as a man.
And what my relationship
I just don't drink beer. I order water now. Yeah, and what my relationship is, and I'm going to have to make really hard choices.
And what my future is in a way, because when it comes to a marriage or a partnership, you like mourn the future of something. It's like it's way heavier than saying, I'll have a lemonade. It's like...
Yeah, that's easy.
But so much of addiction is that. I mean, that's what addiction's been for me my whole life, whether it's weed or video games or whatever it is. It is always the distraction from confronting what is really going on. Yeah. And it's easier to tell yourself this narrative. I mean, it's interesting how, a story, because what you said before about, you were telling yourself the story of I'm an alcoholic and it almost like it's manifests into reality. And I've done that my whole life.
Totally.
I'm the angry guy. I get angry at things. And then, I hit like 30, 35 and I was just like, I don't actually think I'm that angry.
Dude,
I think I've just been fucking playing a character for so long that I forgot who the fuck I actually am.
That was me on stage.
Totally.
Yelling and ranting. And I realized that this year, because I'm getting ready to I'm going to record that Comedy Store thing for like a new album. And I was just like, I don't have rants. I don't have anything like that. I was just like, I'm not angry off stage.
Yeah.
I'm not nihilistic. I'm like naive to a fault. I'm really like I'm a dumb romantic, even like with everything they have been through.
Well, from when I mean, we don't know each other that well, but from the time that
we hit it off,
really,
fast,
absolutely, yeah. But like a couple of the last conversations that we had, like I got this impression from you where you were kind of railing, and it was like, are you trying to convince me, or are you trying to convince you?
Oh, anything I said during those times were probably like 100% projection, and just trying to figure out who I was, or thinking like if I help other people, same deal with if I quit drinking, right?
Yeah.
If I act like this like wise sage, then I can help other people, so no one will be like, hey, what the fuck's wrong with you, man? You're like, hey, I don't know, we're talking about you. There's a term called dry drunk. Like, I'm sure you guys have met like sober people, and I was probably one of these people who are fucking assholes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like not just assholes like obnoxious, but like evil, like manipulative, narcissistic, all this shit.
Malicious.
And so those are the people that are like, they put down the alcohol and they're like, I'm all done, but never examined, well, what led up to that?
Yeah.
Like my mom, who again is sober now, so which is why I'm talking about it, but for the longest time, she'd have these like short sober runs, and we knew it wasn't going to last, because even while she was sober, she would say stuff like, well, if it wasn't for your father, I could still probably drink, or if it was, and it's like, oh, you haven't confronted why.
Anything,
you just, again, ordered the lemonade, right? Instead of temporarily, and it's not going to last. And so that was another reason I was like, man, I started drinking again. I was like, I don't want to be around these fucking people either. But now it's really cool, because I just accidentally stopped drinking, and I was like, oh, that's right, I feel better. This might also have to do with being unpopular in high school, actually, because I'll always convince myself that like it feels so cool to be like, let's go meet for drinks. Yeah. And it's like, oh, because no one asked me for drinks in high school.
Yeah.
Or like, let's go get stoned. Or like, I have this like buddy who's like this like fucking rock star, and like he dates models, and like right before I got sober, I did like coke for the first time, and I've never done it. And I was like, and I just had this moment where I'm like, well, I either get addicted to cocaine now,
all chips in.
Or I realized that I was just peer pressured by a fucking 24-year-old on my roof of my new apartment in Los Angeles, and I'm being a fucking idiot, and I'm clearly trying to like relive some shit I never had. And then the sober October thing happened, and I was like, maybe I should look into this. And then it just happened where I told my brother, and my brother's like, dude, you never realized it. You always want to define yourself as like the stoner or the drinker or fucking Bill Hicks or whatever. And he's like, you are the happiest when you're like doing jujitsu, when you're eating fairly healthy, and when you're sober.
When you're looking after yourself.
But that's not fun. Like, that doesn't sound fun. That doesn't give you that like dopamine rush of like, I'm being bad. But it's so bizarre that you'll do the thing that makes you
But I
feel
think
worse.
this is.
So, yeah, no,
I was just going to say, I think this is so funny because when you guys were talking about it before, I have this theory, and Benny and I have talked about it, where we are just who we were in high school, even younger.
We literally talked about this for an hour on the phone today.
Yeah, we are.
We had a massive fight, and we
had a huge fight. It was really tense until today. It's fine now.
Oh, good.
But like we were talking about it, it's like I always see myself as an awkward, uncomfortable, really socially anxious person because I was just so uncomfortable in high school.
Yeah,
and Ben always sees himself as just this like angry, person who's like,
shuffling fat slob.
Yeah, you use the word repulsive. I use the word awkward. Like it's these words that get imprinted when you're like, a teenager, when you're going through those first social things, and they just fucking stay forever.
And it's crazy how it sounds so self-helpy, and I really wouldn't bring it up, but it's helped me so much. Where like just changing the language you use about yourself.
Oh, totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is massive. I still call myself stupid a lot. That's the big one.
Yeah, see, I try not to say
I've stopped calling myself like ugly. I've started being like way more like positive and confident. Where it's like on paper, it's like I've like tapped out UFC fighters. I've like done all the big comedy shows I've wanted to do. Like there's a lot of cool shit about me that even like saying that now into a microphone, I'm just like,
but you have to acknowledge it.
You do.
And it's fucked that we live in a fucking culture where talking about something that you're good at and acknowledging, no, actually, I'm good at that thing. That you then have to, diffuse that. And it leads back to that whole like, I actually really am.
Wait, question for you guys. Is it culture or is it our culture of comedy? Because when I went back to comedy, so when I had fucking disappeared, all I did was train and coach jiu-jitsu and MMA. And for the first time, I was hanging around only athletes. And it was interesting because I don't know these guys' politics, but I always associated, being someone very much on the left, I always associated like words like manliness or pull yourself up by your bootstrap or be strong or be tough as like these like toxic Republican get off my lawn words when they're really positive things that liberals should also embrace. Like being tough doesn't mean you're like victim blaming or like wanting to like be healthy doesn't mean you're like fat shaming, like shit like that. And
it's black and white thinking that is the enemy.
That is the enemy. 100%. And so all I started doing was like training and I was hanging around positive people. Then I swear to God, this is true and not me trying to be funny. It's sad, not funny. Nobody laugh. This is sad. This is only depressing and not hyperbolic at all. Serious faces. The second I got back into comedy, not only did I think, okay, I need to start drinking again. I need to start doing that. But I literally thought, I was thinking of what to tweet because I'm trying not to be that political. And I was like, well, I guess I go back to being depressed. And I'm like, I guess that's my fucking brand. Where like you just want to, because that's the shit that anytime I'm on Instagram or like I tweet like went to the gym, really proud of myself, people are like boo, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but if you're like I liked this movie or this was cute or whatever. But with being a comic, I'm like, oh, you have to go back to being self-hating and this crowd's gonna hate me and like fucking don't we have it hard and all that shit.
I hate that type of stuff because I have a similar thing where I try not to, but like my go-to is thinking I'm just an idiot all the time. And it's so fucking toxic.
What, like intellectually?
Because I've talked to you about it. Where I'll just be like, oh, I'm 10 steps behind everyone else. And it's just a weird...
It's so not true.
I know, it's just a weird thing I have stuck in my head.
I've known you for like a day and I was just like, oh, she's really smart. Like,
no, but you know what I mean? It's just
seriously.
like, you said it, like it's just a weird thing you have in your head.
Ingrained, yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, and then I've thought about it too because I'm like, is it a cultural thing or is it like a comedy cultural thing? I think in Australia it's a cultural thing too.
Oh, okay.
It's in the sense that you would, it's not well received if people are like, I mean, I'll hear down the grapevine that one person got off stage and said, man, I fucking killed. And people are like, did you fucking hear that person said that they killed?
That's like the Australian Louis C.K. scandal. It's like, someone was like, I think I'm kind of good at comedy.
Who the fuck do you think you are?
Think pieces written about him.
It's
exactly. Protesting clubs. But he got back on stage after saying that?
It is exactly what it's like. So
Sarah Silverman's like, I found him funny.
I think that's an Australian thing,
tall
possibly.
poppy is a big thing in Australia.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's a phrase in America. Tall poppy syndrome.
Okay.
So it's that idea of like the moment that you get a little bit too fucking big in your britches, mate, we got to cut you down back to size. It's that real well.
That's so fucked up.
Whereas I really think
it's so fucked
I really
up.
think the American mentality, I mean, if you're going to generalize, I really think the American mentality is every time I'm in America, there's this real sense of, no, this is what I do, and I'm fucking great at this thing, and I'm proud of the thing that I do. And, there's this real entrepreneurship.
A little bit. I mean, I think I think New York is more similar to you guys.
Okay.
Where that's one of the reasons, dude. I talked to my dad the other day, and I was like, Dad, what if I got like a huge job, like if I got a job at the Daily Show or something, would you ever think like moving back to New York was a good idea? And he's like, no, you'd kill yourself. Like just straight up. And like he was being so earnest and sincere. Like he didn't think about it. Because there's something really negative. New York, I feel as a whole, I like the hustle, and I've brought that hustle to LA because LA can be a little too laid back. So I like the hustle, but it's very much like you bond over how miserable you are. So it's like the more miserable, the more shit that's gone wrong in your life, like the more street cred you have. Where it's that same deal where it's like, miss this fucking train, this subway sucks, I'm going to miss my spot, which is fucking 7 minutes anyway, and no one's going to fucking show up, and like, blah, 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 fuck this guy shouldn't have made it. LA, I don't give a shit if they're pretending or if it's fake or manufactured. Everyone's at least pretending to be positive. I've had industry meetings like where we have green juice instead of getting like shit faced because everyone's very health conscious. Now, that's a whole host of other bullshit. Where are they health conscious because like we live in this superficial Instagram society? Maybe. But that's what I need in my life. I need like positive people where like literally like every Sunday I go to Moby's house to not like go in the pool with all these chicks, but we meditate.
I was going to say, do you chant?
He makes, yes. Wait. The piano, and it's like a cult. And then we eat like vegan soup that he makes, which one day will have drugs in it and we'll die. But for now, I need that positivity in my life.
I just like the sentence, I meditate with Moby.
It's,
What is your life?
Dude, my first day in LA was like what every Republican thinks liberals do in LA. Where I landed in LAX. I took an Uber to buy a Prius from the airport. I literally went from the airport to the dealership to buy a Prius, and then I went to Moby's house to meditate and eat vegan food. And then I lived in his pool house for like 2 months because
awesome.
I had nowhere to live.
Do you think that the expecting that thing you were talking about in New York, which is very very Sydney and very Australian.
Very
like,
Australian.
this is going to go wrong.
Which is so weird because it's so like beautiful and relaxed here. Like here, it reminds me more. Although I'm in Newtown and it has much more of like a London vibe.
Newtown is very different.
But like I just equate like LA with that lifestyle I was describing, and Sydney seems very much it's sunny, it's beachy.
Sydney's probably a mashup in that it is the health conscious thing where if you go to a meeting, sometimes they're like, "Who wants juice?" Instead of alcohol. But then it does have the other thing, the underbelly of if you do gigs, like Ben said, people are like, "How are you going?" Like I told this story the other day. My partner's a comic. He showed up at a gig that Benny was at, and he'd had this deep conversation with this dude about this guy's family being in a fucking camp. And he gets there and he's like, "I just want to talk to some people and feel better." He goes, "How you guys going?" Everyone was like, "My life is fucked." He's like, "You're like wasted in a comedy club." Everyone.
But it's an immunization against disappointment. That's really what it is. It's like
I love the way you phrase that.
That's how I feel like that's how I live a lot of my life, and I'm trying desperately to deprogram from that.
Well, it's why you say you go to a show and you're like, "Man, I don't know about this audience," and someone's like, "It looks great. Yeah. It's sold out. They're here to laugh," and you're like, "Oh, right. I was just setting the bar low, so if I kill, then I'm a fucking genius that overcame."
I'm never more anxious than when the crowd's having a great time. It's like, I'm going to be the guy that comes and shits in the punch bowl.
There's always a guy.
It's going to be me that fucks it up.
Yep. Which, by the way, like, you never know. Like, if you didn't think that way, like, look, I haven't gotten to LA where I believe like in like The Secret and you can manifest your future, but I do believe in sports psychology, and that's like a step away from that. The Secret is sports psychology, but stupid, right? Where it's like you're gonna say I'm rich and like energy is gonna manifest something that it doesn't work, and they don't believe in vaccines, right? But sports psychology is they've done studies. One of my favorites is they took like 3 groups of basketball players. players for like free throws. One of the groups practiced free throws every day. One of the groups did nothing, and one of the groups just visualized sinking them and sinking them and sinking
cool.
them. And they won.
They did the work.
Yes,
the best,
they did the best. Followed by the people who actually did it. Followed by now they were all skilled and they've practiced before. It's not like we could visualize that and beat NBA players.
Yep.
But there is something about knowing that that's an outcome, right? And the way you carry yourself,
Totally.
If you just go, I'm going to suck, there's going to be something subconsciously that audience reads that's like where you're defensive or,
it's
or your
palpable.
shoulders are, as opposed to just like, fuck this.
Micro-tells.
Yeah.
And language is a spell, you
so
tell, I mean, I used to say this
huge.
to my mom a lot,
Yeah.
she went through a patch where she was extremely negative about herself. She
my
would
mom
always
too.
describe herself as a piece of shit or, after her parents died, she would, talk about us. She used the phrase, I'm a destitute orphan.
I'm only
that's
laughing because she's...
a little bit, Oliver Twist or Simba from The Lion King. Just fucking relax.
Were you like, Mom, maybe, but also you're a great writer. Phenomenal vocabulary.
But I used to say to her, if you wake up every morning and you tell yourself, I had a partner like that. She would wake up every morning and you go, I'm depressed.
Yeah.
You do that over a long enough timescale and you become depressed.
Well, because if you think about it, because I think when people just hear myself, I'll just use me. Like when I would just hear be positive, I'm like, go fuck yourself.
Oh,
I
totally.
have nothing. But when you actually see it in action, we're like, okay, so like a pragmatic way to do it is if you wake up and you go, I'm a piece of shit, then maybe you sleep a little later, right? So now your day is kind of gone and now you're more lethargic. So then maybe you have to have more coffee to wake up. So now you're like a little jittery and you're going to crash harder, right? You have emails to send, but like, what's the fucking point? Like that guy's not going to get back to me, as opposed to if you emailed him and he just went, oh fuck man, I totally forgot about that, I've been super busy, like yes, let's meet or whatever. And you don't go for things, you don't maybe talk to that girl who might be fucking waiting for you, she might not, but be confident enough to like deal with that. And there are so many, when I go, I need this to happen or I'm gonna make this happen, suddenly your brain opens up and you just remember, oh my God, I met this guy and he said he's connected there. Literally when I was professional wrestling at 36 is the most insane fucking thing I could ever do. I literally don't even know where to start.
It's great.
And then when I was like, I'm gonna fucking do it, I forgot that really famous pro wrestlers are fans of mine and have followed me on Twitter and stuff. And all wrestlers kind of want to be comics, right? Or
absolutely.
That's why I'm friends with musicians, because they want to be comics, I want to be a rock star, right? And you can trade. And dude, I emailed all of them and all of them were like, this is the fucking coolest thing. Fuck yes, you can do this. Because of comedy or because of MMA. And within a day of me having that idea, I'm in a ring training.
Oh, totally.
Do you have a character?
I have an idea that
Are you a heel or a hero?
I have a really good heel idea.
Live fucked up?
I'll tell you off. I'll tell you I'm very excited about it.
Can I just ask a question? It might be a little bit personal, but it's in line with what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
In this terms of building a character and kind of telling yourself a story about who you are.
Yeah.
When I don't think I'm mincing my words to say things turn to shit for you pretty quickly. Was that? I imagine it would have been fucking devastating and but was there a part of it that was slightly liberating in the sense of I'm the shackles are off and I don't need to kind of play this guy anymore?
Well, so yes and no, right? My first reaction when you said the shackles were off, I was like, well, if I was a sexual predator and was like, hey, I can be me. I can prey on what everybody knows. Time to go on the prowl. I can turn in my fucking gay Prius for a van and no.
You're a Night Stalker.
Yeah. Oh, damn it. That's my heel character's name.
Is it really?
No. Jesus Christ, man. I like that you had commitment to the bit though, and you were like, "Yeah, fucking do it." So that was really hard because the stuff that was said about me, for the most part,
it was absurd. From an outside perspective, on the other side of the country, and being within the comedy community, there was not one person I knew that was like, "Yeah, that is not the fucking stupidest thing I've ever heard."
Oh wow, because Jen, you're wonderful, but even when you made a joke about it in the car, my instinct was to kind of freeze up and be like, does she know or does she think I'm this person? Or,
when? What did I even say?
No, you didn't say anything.
Oh, cool.
That's just me being around like women now. Like, even,
oh fuck!
Like I met.
Thank you for calling me a woman.
Like, yeah.
Please saw me as a lady.
Thank you.
I don't even remember what I even said.
Well, no, you didn't say anything. It was Ben made a joke about what happened to me, and my first thought was just like, fuck. You know, like it just froze
shit,
up.
okay.
Or like today, like I met one of your guys' mutual friends at the gym and her friend, and like we were having a blast, and like and yeah, she was like, "Oh, I want to like look you up and go to one of my your shows," and I was like, "Fuck," because where anytime that happens in my head, I'm like, "Bye forever," like bye bye.
No, she's cool.
And but yeah, I mean, look, anyone who reads it. For the most part, that is the consensus around normal people. But here's what's even more fucked up. Even some of the minor stuff, and to be like incredibly clear for anyone who doesn't know, where it's like nothing was like Louis assault or touching, or it was literally like it was consensual relationships.
It sounded like someone had buyer's remorse.
It was that.
Yeah.
But even that, a lot of it wasn't even true. Like it made it sound like I was this like serial cheater when like my ex and I were trying an open relationship to kind of save the marriage. It made it there was just a lot of stuff in there that was like that it wasn't who I was. And that's why when people at first when they were asking about being liberated, I mean, I told you in the car where I had this legit moment. I mean, I'm talking about it on stage where like I botched trying to kill myself, and come to my CD taping at the Comedy Store, everybody. On the 9th at the Comedy Store. Hear about how I tried to kill myself. Up next. Okay, so boy, I had this moment where I was like, when I didn't do that, I was like, well, I'm going to become like the best man I could possibly be. And what was so weird is like a lot of that shit wasn't true. So I was like, I don't know. Like, it's not like I could even write this public apology of like, yeah, I used to like use women on the road. And like, you know, I tried to be like as clear as possible. And I'm really not that guy. So that was really hard for me. But then I realized when I really looked, I was like, well, there is still other stuff that I did do that contributed to it, right? Like what you were talking about, Jen, like if I had the guts to get out of that relationship earlier, I wouldn't have been so pent up. I wouldn't have been so like love starved that like I thought I was like in love with like, you know, women I slept with on the road or like I was selfish. I was like very much that depressed person that would like either tweet about it or if I was in a relationship, it was kind of like I'm sad, so this is the focus instead of like asking like how are you? And so in that sense, it's made me easily the best boyfriend I've ever been, the best partner. Like I've gotten out of relationships much quicker if I could tell that like they were starting to like me more than maybe I was ready for.
Yeah.
Where instead of old me, which again, really selfish.
Yeah.
It's not what you think of. It's not cheating. It's not whatever. But old me would have been like, I'm going to hold on to this because I'm getting validation at the risk of you getting hurt more down the line. Whereas now I'm just like, man the fuck up, dude, and like go and I'll walk away from that.
And have the difficult conversation.
Have the really difficult conversation and I've stayed friends with them, which is fucking unheard of for me, right? And then what you were talking about, I think, is being like a preachy fucking asshole. That has been very liberating.
That's the part I meant.
I know, but I felt like I should like address the other shit.
Before you talk about that though, I just want to say like I feel as though you had a very normal experience, but because you're in the public eye, you're forced to examine it in a way that is so harsh to everyone. Like even the language you use then when you're like, I mean, I was fucking selfish and I was this. If you heard the shit that we've both done in past relationships, like everyone has. It's just that no one has it public. Like some of the stuff anyone I know has done can be described as, you know, fucking selfish or, I mean, some of the shit I've done is fucking horrible. Like, and no one is evil or horrible. We're just human. The difference is once it's in a public platform, you have to overanalyze every aspect of it in order to try and especially now.
Can I say something just because I
of course
almost started crying when you said that. Like, so obviously
I'm sorry.
No, in like the best way. Where that's crazy. Because Well, what's nuts is if you Google me, and if you do click it, please click something else, since like in solidarity, like click on my fucking iTunes page for my podcast or something to bump that up. The headlines make it look like I was accused of like sexual assault.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's really fucked
a fucking
up.
predator.
It's really fucked up.
And like I've never used like names on the show, and I'm not trying to start drama, but like, you know, the day everyone was calling out Louis C.K., you know how like every comic was sort of like, every male comic was like sort of like forced to like disavow him on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did down the line, but it was the same day there was this dumb article that came out about me after I went on Joe Rogan's and said Jamie Kilstein rebrands as anti-feminist, which and it was a website, I swear to God, called Brooklyn Vegan, and I was just like, I caused this. This is my fault. And so what I said, and what I'll say on every appearance I do, is that, you know, if I went the anti-feminist route, if I went full conservative and did that turn that a lot of people have done, I'd be a fucking millionaire right now. I would write a book. The book would be called Why I Left the Left and the Right is Right. And I would have my own fucking spot on Fox News, and it would be great. Instead, last year I was like living on a couch, and like now things are going well, but like it wasn't going well when I had that opportunity. And what I said on the show was, you know, I wasn't even really like falsely accused of anything, but let's just use that language because a lot of like
the tone.
Yeah, it's weird when like a lot of like pro rapey guys come to your side. We're like, I don't want to be on this side. But a lot of people are like, does this make you think differently about like women and like stuff like that? And, you know, I said this on Joe's. I definitely had a moment where after, you know, years of tweeting like hashtag believe all women, and then you read what's being said about you and you're like, hashtag don't believe all women. Like, don't believe that woman. Like, that's not true.
Because women are human.
They
like
are human,
else.
but I still tend to side. So what I said was, which is not anti-feminist at all, is I was like, look, there are infinitely more women who will not get justice for their assault than men who get falsely accused, right? So that is still a much more important battle to fight, and it's being fought. However, and this is as close to anti-feminist as I'll get, when you do make shit up, when you do conflate a bad relationship with emotional abuse or cheating with predatory behavior instead of just like being a dick or whatever, or even you compare like what Al Franken did to like what Harvey Weinstein did, you're making it harder for women.
Absolutely.
You're making it worse for women.
100%.
I don't think that's anti-feminist. So anyway, so back to what you said. So Patton Oswalt that day didn't tweet anything about Louis. I could play armchair psychologist and say because Louis is probably going to be back and have power. So he went after me like I was a literal rapist.
Wow.
I've never had encounters with him. He was one of my favorite comics. I've never said anything bad. And I say this not to start drama or anything about Patton. I've drafted an email to him like a million times. Like I have his email, but like I just want it to die. But you know, and in my head, it's like, well, I'm the weaker target. Cool. I was like the suicidal dude on the couch.
Yeah, it's easier.
But it's also like every gig I go to now, that's a worry. Every date I go on, like, that's a worry. Where it's just like, where, I mean, thank God I wasn't falsely accused of like something like infinitely more horrific, right? But like, anyway, hearing you say that was so crazy because I've like, I am glad that I still like, I want to try to be the best, right? And there were times I was selfish, and there were times that I was a coward or whatever. But like that was really nice of you. Where I think all of us, I think your listeners, we always think that like our problems, like it's just us, and like we're the only ones going through it, and it feels very like, you know, our own movie or whatever. But yeah, hearing you say that was like fucking crazy because I don't think I've been on a podcast where it wasn't all the podcasts I've done have been incredibly supportive, but it also feels like I'm giving my spiel of like I'm not a fucking sex predator. So to hear you guys be like, hey, wait a second, we've been in like fucked up relationships too. It's like,
man,
right.
But
you have no idea. Seriously.
Yeah, no, you seriously have no idea.
The stories
Christ.
we could tell.
Can you guys tell me so I can compile my Jezebel article on both of you so I bump my shit to page 2?
But the reality of humans being in relationships, humans getting naked together, all of these things.
Humans being flawed.
Humans being flawed is you are going to move through life and hurt people, and it's not necessarily malicious. It's not evil. It's clumsy. It's ham-fisted. We're all fumble fucking our way through life. Yeah. And I love, that thing you said about, confronting the fact that you were, a coward in past relationships.
Yeah.
When I got out of my long-term relationship, I'd never done the dating thing.
Yeah.
I'd never fucked around in my 20s because I was so filled with shame and self-loathing. So I got out of this relationship at 32, 33, and I was like, that's it. I'm getting on the fucking apps.
Yep.
I'm seeing someone every week.
Yeah,
and it was, I'm going on a fucking rampage. But I so relate to what you were saying. I needed that love and I needed that validation. And there were times where I was, there was a woman I got into a long distance thing with in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I knew from day one, this is going fucking nowhere. Not because she's a bad person or that she was a fucking wonderful person. I was a husk. I had nothing to give.
Yeah.
I would wake up next to her in the middle of the night and think it was my ex. I was like, I was in post-traumatic fucking I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
pinwheeling around hurting people. And, instead of having that difficult conversation with her going, look, I think you're great and all I can offer you right now is some cuddles, some sex now and then, some great conversation. I can't give you a relationship. I was such a coward. And so I just withdrew and started ghosting her. And eventually she rang me up and she said, you're a piece of fucking shit. You're a coward. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm sorry, and gave her the explanation then. She's like, it's too late, man. You're a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
And I felt like shit.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, I'm grateful for the experience because I haven't done it since.
Yes.
And I would not do it again.
Yeah, because we grow from it all.
But it's just a reality and a fact of life and a tragic aspect of life that she had to kind of get hurt for me to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And it's just fucking
and
shit.
it wasn't you being a bad person. And what you just said, and again, not to make this too political, but when you were just like, we grow from it, or what did you just say?
Yeah, you grow from it.
Yeah, like we're starting with this like this Twitter outrage, and we're starting to get to the point where like we're not letting people grow from it.
No, people.
And I'm not talking about again like rape or like predatory like Harvey Weinstein shit, but like bad relationships and stuff like that, where it's like instead of, which is weird because like the same people who want Al Franken to disappear forever for like taking like a dumb picture are also the same people on the left who talk about like prison reform and like really important like rehabilitation things. And so if you and again, this is I hesitate to say this stuff because you don't want men's rights guys like jumping out of the bushes being like, yeah, but like if you don't let men fumble around and ask questions, then you know what they're gonna do is they're gonna fucking sink back into those fucking bushes with their other creepy friends, and they're just gonna be like, fucking women or like blah 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 blah, as opposed to like, look, this is not the time for guys. This obviously is the time for women. But if Matt Damon says, I don't think we should equate ass grabbing with like rape, and people are boycotting his movies and he's trending on Twitter like he was accused of rape, or the guy who played Superman was like, yeah, I'm kind of nervous to like be around like women I don't know by myself. Like, are those clumsy things and could they be phrased better, and should we be focusing on women and not pandering to dumb men? Sure. But if men don't feel like they can ask questions and be like, what am I supposed to do without being like screamed at, instead of like, tell them what they're supposed to do.
But you know what else is, for women to have honest conversations, I think it's even harder. Yeah. Because for women to say something like, and I mean like this is totally incorrect, but I got really drunk, I fucked them and I regret it now and I don't remember what I said. Like that is not okay. Because that's like, well, no, did they take advantage? And it's all of a sudden everyone, it feels like the world or the Western world is going through fucking puberty. Yeah. Where everyone has learnt how to speak, but no one knows what the fuck to say.
You should make that a bit. That's really
and everyone,
smart.
But you know.
No, that's really smart. Sorry to get all comic-y about it, but I'm just like, that's a really good bit. Also, our society is crumbling, but write it down.
But do you know? But you know what I'm saying? It's like totally. We're talking about more shit than we've ever discussed ever before. Yeah. And then the moment someone's voice breaks because they say, I think pinching a bum's not the same as raping someone.
And it's not the same
Get
fucking
the fuck
thing.
out.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't want to hear from them.
It
and
ain't
it's
the same thing.
He's just
That's
the
more
awkward,
insulting to women who
stupid
were
kid.
raped.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And I feel like there's this whole thing of like, if I don't like what they say, they have to fucking disappear.
Well,
why?
Yeah, and that was the same with
It's
like.
so dangerous to have
so
that opinion.
dangerous. And
but
it's-
also this thing of like,
No.
this thing of, if you are on your high horse for a long enough timeline, you will eventually be exposed as a fraud.
Yeah.
Because we are all flawed.
all flawed.
We're all fucking, we're all fuck ups. We all do dumb shit. We all say stuff in private that if you heard it in public would be mortifying.
Read a history book.
Yeah.
Every king, every royal, every person that people held up as a god figure was feral, was insane. You know, it's like.
While I appreciate the comparisons,
I watched a lot of Winston Churchill documentaries this week.
Well, that thing, I mean, did you hear that
He was
thing?
amazing, but he was a booze hound and a total.
you just have
He did good things and he was also a shit cunt.
Yeah,
People
he
are
was-
complicated.
Yeah.
That's
People are
what I mean.
three-dimensional.
I mean, Gandhi cheated. Martin Luther
Yes.
King cheated. Like, you have to give people a chance to learn. And if you just make them scared to ask questions, they're not going to learn. They're either going to get defensive or they're going to stop asking questions or they're just going to become a total recluse. Like, I stayed in that very jealous relationship, which got like, I mean, one of my friends was like, I mean, she would like hit me.
it's
And
not
again,
okay.
she never saw me text an ex. She never saw me flirt with a girl. Literally nothing.
It doesn't matter.
No, and so but she would do that stuff, and my friend was like, if only people knew that while you were being accused of being emotionally abusive, you were in a literal physically
Yeah.
abusive relationship. But I stayed in that because I assumed that like no girl would like me again or no whatever, because again, there's so much shame behind all that stuff. And luckily, I had a support system of a lot of women, ironically enough, where I felt comfortable, and especially having a girlfriend. I mean, look, I say that stuff about her, but also the fact that she stayed with me and she supported me, and just having this like wonderful, beautiful, albeit maybe toxic,
All been there.
girl by me, made me feel like, well, I can't be a creep. So that's why I put up with it for so long. But
that in itself is such a complicated thing to discuss with someone, and that doesn't sell like I don't know, magazines, whatever the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that in itself
It's
was
either
saying it was really toxic, it was violent and abusive and really unhealthy. But gosh, I felt good at times, and she's still really a warm, kind person.
Dude.
Like you can't. That is not something you can put into a tweet and have a billion. It's too complicated,
no,
you know.
I mean, it's either you're a good guy or you're a bad guy on Twitter, right? And,
Well, and everything.
Well, and women are either, powerful Amazonians or these infantilized little girls
Well,
that
look-
cannot fucking think for themselves and must be coddled.
Oh, man,
that
I've
was
had-
another thing. Someone said in my sorry, no, you go.
No, I was just going to say I've had a lot of male friends who've been with women where if you reversed the genders, people would immediately say, wow, you're in a really abusive
fuck
relationship
yeah.
and we need to go to a police officer because I'm scared this man's going to hurt you. If you crisscrossed heaps of times.
Oh, yeah.
Heaps of
Yeah.
times. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was talking
no.
about you, Benny. You know I'm talking about you. I was trying to be subtle. It was about Ben.
I'll take the heat. It was me too, guys.
And it was about you as well. Fuck.
It was
It's
hashtag me too.
every man in this room.
Hashtag me three.
It was all of us.
Well, you know what I mean. It's like it's
yeah.
fucking complicated.
Well, I mean, even like Sarah Silverman, right? Like what she said this week, again, was it the time? But I don't even, you know what? I have this like progressive like twitch where I have to like preface everything so people don't get mad at me. Let's just fucking say it, right? So when she said that Louis C.K. did that in front of her and she liked it sometimes and then sometimes she said no and he obliged to it, we can argue about, I still have to do it. We can argue about whether this is the time to say it, blah, blah, blah. But it's like when you say we have to listen to women, you can't then deny a woman's experience because it
Yeah.
doesn't fit your narrative.
yeah.
Right?
This happens
Now-
to Jen all the time.
I'm
All the
sure.
time I get in trouble.
Now, I'm not saying that like because she said that, therefore, and she said this too. She was apologizing to the woman who accused Louis on Twitter, where like that doesn't mean that those women didn't have incredibly negative, bad
Of course not.
experiences. But to again trending on Twitter, fuck Sarah Silverman, blah blah blah, from these same people, it's like, well, that's. I mean, this is why, like, you can't deny her experience if we are, like, feminists if we do #BelieveAllWomen, right?
Oh, it is so fucking complicated. The amount of times where I consider myself a feminist in that I say whatever I like, whenever I like, and I do comedy. And I've had heaps of people say that it's it's backwards to feel like this or it's whatever to feel like that. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck. So doesn't that in itself mean that I'm a feminist? I don't fucking care, And it's so complicated because so many people are trying to tick so many boxes. It feels like everyone is so lost that they're like, I fit into this. Like I'm a conservative, so I have to believe this or I have to believe that. Or I'm liberal, so I have to poo-poo that person and say that person has to fucking disappear. It's like nothing is black and white. Everything is complicated and nobody has the energy to discuss it because when you discuss it, it gets so uncomfortable. Yeah. Like Benny and I talk about shit all the time where we've been in rooms where Ben was saying, in the animal kingdom, there are 2 identified genders for most animals. And a guy said to him, I'm not going to acknowledge that because I feel like someone will blog about me and say that I'm anti-trans.
He thought he would be accused of being transphobic for saying that gender exists in the animal kingdom and that there's a delineated difference between a male penguin and a female penguin.
But that it wasn't political.
He could be anti-trans penguin.
Yeah, but it wasn't even linked in a way. Yeah. And then
I can top you. I wrote an article. About being this self-righteous Twitter warrior, trying to shame people and never talking to someone who politically disagreed with me, and all this stuff after John McCain died. And I wrote it for this website called Quillette, and Quillette has a bunch of conservative writers and readers and puts out a lot of stuff I disagree with. And it also has a lot of left-wing people who, maybe some of them, are the classic kind of left-wing who are like, but the left's getting kind of nuts, right?
Yeah.
I had verified people on Twitter, people who used to be my friends. I didn't mention trans people at all in the article. And automatically they're like, Jamie's transphobic and alt-right. I literally wrote this piece that I'm like, be nice to each other. But that was it. And
That's
then
amazing.
And like, so clearly they didn't read the piece, but also if you're going to associate what people write about, like with that, like, okay, well, the New York Times led us to war in Iraq. So does that mean everyone who writes for the New York Times wants there to be like dead Arab kids? Yep. Like we're getting to the point where we're shaming people for like writing for a place who like it's just
someone's perceived from what they've said.
I've talked about this on every show I've done, so I don't want to like rip off myself, but I feel like it's important and it fits into this.
It's really important right now to talk about this shit.
When I was depressed, when I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy in, when I was suicidal, what I would do is I would wake up every day and I would open my computer and I would see who are we mad at today, and everyone would already be tweeting about it, and I wouldn't have time to read the article, so like I wouldn't even do fucking research. I would just read my tribe's take on it in a tweet and try to come up with a funnier version of that. I would tweet it, even if it was something good that I believed in. I wasn't doing it for the cause. I was like hitting refresh to see if any celebrities retweeted it or if anyone liked it. Like I said this on Kreischer's podcast, but like I was the guy who like if like my mom called and someone was like, your mom's on the phone, I'd be like, tell her I can't talk, I'm tweeting about feminism. Like that was the kind of bullshit I was doing. And like I can tell you, as someone who was on that side, it was because I fucking hated myself and needed that Twitter dopamine to make up for my shitty
100%.
life. And that is now leading to people's lives being ruined.
Yeah, people's
getting
lives.
Fired from publications. And by the way, I'm not talking about like Me Too. I'm talking about just like shaming in general. You tweet a bad joke, right? Or not even that. You have a bad joke from like fucking like 15 years ago, like the director of Guardians of the Galaxy did, right? And you're done. And it is...
Yeah, see, it's crazy. Like how can people... Can you imagine if they looked back to what you thought 4 years ago? Like any of these people who are on the witch hunts, if you were like, hey, where were you 15 years ago?
And God knows what was going on in your life.
It's just that there was no...
And I think it comes down to kind of what we were talking about before we got into politics, where it comes down to like people don't want to look at themselves and change. Oh, we were talking about this with the drinking thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, people don't want to look at themselves and change. So you're going to find other people who are doing bad things and you're going to go. It's like when you see a comic you really love bomb, you're not happy they bombed, but you're also kind of like, whew, Like, it feels kind of good where you're like, oh, the best
just
guy.
like me.
Like, dude, I saw Louis C.K. have to go up before Des Bishop in like a tent full of like 16-year-old girls, and he died so horribly, and I will never fucking forget that. It was amazing. He came back and asked me what happened, and like he didn't know who I was. And but you know what I mean? When you see someone else go through it, you go, okay, so I feel better. And I think that's what happens on Twitter is we don't even care morally. We're not donating to fucking causes for women. We're not doing, I mean, some people are obviously, but we're not doing shit like that. We're just trying to bury people. And all we want to do is just bury and bury and bury people until like there's no one left but like you, and then you'll finally have to like confront your own bullshit.
But that's
you'll
what
probably kill yourself.
Well, you know, I mean, the left is consuming itself at such a voracious rate that it will just be one bloated king left person left.
Ew,
you know, king left.
What's that guy gonna be like? Oh, so awful.
Because, I mean, it's this.
First of all, he won't want to be called a king because that's gender conformist.
Of course, yeah. But it's this thing of like, and it's always the most uncharitable interpretation possible. It could never be, you know, like, let's not take this person's entire life into perspective.
Oh,
you know
and
what I
then when
mean?
the person apologizes, now they're trending because their apology wasn't good enough. And it's like, if everyone, I mean, not that I'm the one who should give relationship advice, but I think the best thing you can do in a relationship is if during a fight, instead of looking to bury the other person and make them feel bad and get that little rush of like, haha, I'm right, is if you figure out what you could have done better and they figure out what they could have done better, and you can both find ways to sort of like apologize and move on, right? If you do want to continue the relationship, I think we need to do that in like our life.
Oh, yeah.
Where instead
of
of
course.
just being like, what did this person do today? Or what did that guy do on Twitter? It's just like, what can I do better than what I did yesterday?
Yeah.
And I think if we all start, like, dude, I kind of like retweet some political things, but I really don't tweet about politics, and I don't get as many followers, and I certainly don't get as many retweets. But like, I call my mom a lot more, and I talk to my brothers every day.
Yeah.
And like, I've been really good in relationships since all that shit, and I've been really good single for the first time. And I teach kids, like,
And that shit's real.
It's real.
That shit's real,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, like nobody changed the world because of my tweets. I mean, in fact, even on my old show, I think when I talked about depression, even though we were like crazy political, I got the most emails when I talked about like depression and stuff like that, even though we were a political show and I shouldn't be talking about it because things shouldn't be only about like the white straight cis man, right? But that shit helped people, and we get Twitter's not real, guys. Like, it's not.
None of it's
not
real.
fucking real. Yeah.
I'm so aware of what we put out into the world. Like when we were talking about before, your mind frame and your language, like the language you use with yourself. I remember I was like depressed for quite a while. This is going back like maybe 5 years, and I was like about to turn 30, and I was in therapy, and she was like, when you wake up in the morning, try and just be positive. And I was homeless, so I was on a couch in my sister's house that was being like half knocked down.
Yeah,
so there was no walls, and I was on the floor, and I woke up with my nieces climbing on me, which was cute, and they just went, happy birthday, Auntie Jen. And I was like,
Holy shit.
oh my God, I'm on the floor. It's just, but it was that whole thing of like, you take responsibility in a mental way for what your day will be by doing that,
Yeah.
you know, and also you don't take responsibility for other people. The biggest issue I have is people, what are we holding other people up to? When people say, oh my God, they said this, we need to, you know, it's a witch hunt. What are you holding them up to? They're a human. They just made the mistake of making their opinion public and thought that people weren't
But
bored.
oftentimes it's not even public. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah,
just someone
often
existing
someone's-
in life.
Yeah.
You know, I got into a cab one time, and the cab driver, you know, he's a 70-year-old guy, and he's like, oh, I just don't understand all this trans stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, of course he doesn't understand all this trans stuff. He's lived in a fucking tin shed in outback Australia his whole life. He never met a fucking trans. It's like he's just been exposed to this idea.
Right.
But, you know, it's like the consensus is unless he's somehow psychically tapped into it and immediately assimilated this idea and is completely positive about it right now, he's a fucking asshole and he needs to die.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
because he's
it's
not on Twitter, because he's not following trends, because he's not.
It's just he's just a guy living his life, and he heard a new idea and he's assimilating it.
Now,
And
look,
he's not necessarily a bad fucking person.
And if, by the way, if he's hurting people, if he's bullying people,
that's
then now
different.
we have a fucking problem.
That's
right?
different.
But if he's saying that to you because you're like not a trans person, and he's like, I literally don't get it. And then, by the way, if you started fucking screaming at him and stuff like that, but like maybe it's gonna take him saying that to someone and being like, oh, here's what it is, man.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like, and actually explain. I mean, that's the conversations I've been having with people nowadays. People who will come up to me and they read me on that website and maybe they're conservative or maybe they're libertarian, and they were like, the first step is us not thinking they're all Nazis and them not thinking we're all like Molotov cocktail throwing like anarchists, right? And once they go, well, that dude on the left's like kind of funny and he seemed really nice. That's step one. And then step two is you have that conversation and they respect you now. And you go, hey, man, have you thought about it that way? Instead of just screaming at them. And a lot of times they do.
Disgust comes from fear and fear comes from lack of exposure. My grandfather was, not like a vile homophobe, but gay people freaked him out.
Yeah.
He's an old Jewish man.
He was born in 1916 in a fucking Polish village that had horse and buggies. But by the end of his life...
Horse and buggies freak me out.
No, right?
But by
Old
the
Jewish
end of his
men
life...
freak me out. No, I'm sorry.
Jen.
And he
Sorry,
died
honey.
at 88, and in the last few years of his life, we were sitting there watching 6 Feet Under one day, and it was a scene between David and Keith.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, he got all misty-eyed, and he's like, you know what? Their love is just like our love. It's beautiful.
Holy
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like...
Holy shit.
But he had to come to that place.
Yeah.
And some fucking 21-year-old with a septum piercing screaming in his fucking face, you're a fucking homophobe, is not going to have fucking changed him.
Yeah.
He had to get
Getting him
there.
fired from like the mill isn't gonna like do anything.
Take his horse.
Yeah.
He was
He's got nothing left. Yeah.
Leave the buggy. It freaks me out.
He was from a different world and a different time, and he had a completely different paradigm of reality.
Yeah, man.
And that idea
Yeah.
to him was foreign.
Yeah.
But when he was exposed to it in a way that was organic and made sense, of course, his conscience and his heart came to the right side.
We're not demonizing, but like we're not allowing evolution. Like, I mean, this actually started like under George Bush when like John Kerry got called a flip-flopper. I thought John Kerry...
He changed his mind. Wow.
Which is so good.
So good.
Yeah, it is good.
I mean, I disagree with a lot of John Kerry stuff now, but like, I mean, I was just like, in my head, I was like, he's going to fucking smoke him. This dude served in Vietnam honorably, got awarded all these medals. Then, after serving, unlike Bush, who dodged a draft, after serving, threw his medals over the White House but still serve. So I'm like, man, there's no fucking holes in this armor. And then they did it by calling him a flip-flopper. And we demonize that.
Yeah.
When in reality, it should be applauded. It's growing. It's evolution. It's becoming wiser or more empathetic, or in your dad's case, meeting more people, or being exposed to certain things, or just growing with the times. Like, I mean, these are good things that we should be rewarding and not trying to like gotcha people. What you were saying about the think positive in the morning.
Oh yeah.
When I first started doing that, I legitimately, it was like, I think in like a fucking depressed YouTube spiral, I like found Tony Robbins and I was like, all right, I'm going to be positive. and I tried to.
Yes.
Have you seen that Netflix documentary about him?
Yeah. It's fascinating, right? I tried to. I was trying to like do like a positive meditation, like guided meditation thing, and I kept. I mean, this was still like everything was pretty fresh. And I kept thinking of all these like horrible negative things during this like positive motivational meditation, and I literally caught myself saying, just be positive, you fucking piece of shit. Is that not the most fucking insane thing you've ever heard? But what helped me is, and I never did this before, ever, is gratitude. That to me has been the biggest thing, like whether it's at night and I'm taking a walk and listening to music and like thinking about the things I crushed that day. Even if it was just like today, I like went to the gym for the first time, even though I'm on like road mode, you know?
Dude, if you have a pillow and a blanket, you're doing better than 99% of people that ever lived on this planet, ever.
Yeah, it's huge. And one of the biggest things that helps me do it in the morning is, and it's hard, and I can feel the difference now. Now I'm at least aware of it. The days I do it, I know, but I try to stay off my phone for at least a half hour and like plug it in across the room.
Yeah.
And so I'll like stretch or I'll meditate, or like when I'm home, I'll like play with my cat. I get out of bed, I drink like a shitload of water, and I try to put off coffee and phone, because
me too.
when you go right to your phone, one, you're bombarded again by just negative shit. Two, you're really reactionary.
Yeah.
And so anytime I've tried, and I read. That's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I like retain stuff so much better. So I read and drink coffee instead of scroll Twitter, because the times that I check Instagram or Twitter first and then I try to read, my ADD is out of fucking control.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally, when my brain's the most like impressionable, I'm training it for negative bullshit everywhere.
Yeah.
So that has made the positivity, and then your brain's just so much clearer that you can go, you go on Twitter. Like that was another thing. Like back in the old days, I would like open Twitter for my dopamine hits, but then I was just like, well, 50 strangers just called me a cuck. So like, good morning. Like that's how I started my day, just fighting with fucking loser strangers on the internet. But yeah, that helps so fucking much. And like, I mean, even this, like, I'll be like fucking like super grateful for, and like, yeah, just like, but really like simple shit, man, like going for walks and stuff like that. Like it helps immensely.
Well, it grounds you. It brings you back to the moment, to something tangible. Like I feel grateful for having dinner with a friend.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like
that's fucking stupid. But.
But you know what I mean?
Sorry,
Like,
I was too earnest for too long. I had to be a fucking dickhead comic.
well, like we
yeah, no, it's huge.
Yeah, like Benny and I were talking about the other day how a friend was telling me that people who get up and look at social media within the first 15 minutes of being awake, their productivity drops during the day, something immense.
I literally feel it.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
and I know what's happening, and I'm like, fuck, I can't undo it.
No, it just puts you in the most fucked mood. I like to get up, drink a whole heap of water and like stretch and stuff and do my hippie shit like yoga and stuff.
Yeah,
So I started doing that. I started meditating, and like really helps. I'm
a way better human being when I do that.
Yeah, me too.
See, I like, because I don't have an iPhone. I've got one like a little burner, but I've got an iPod that connects to Wi-Fi, and I still haven't shaken the habit of, man, the sleep is not out of my eyes.
Yeah.
And the first thing I do every morning, like literally at 6 o'clock in the morning,
It's so
Donald
bad.
Trump. What did Donald Trump do while I was asleep?
So
what did Trump do? Is there a fucking mushroom cloud in New York City? Is the world ended?
I've learned not to look at the news in the morning or before
Literally,
bed.
all you have to do, because I feel like our body like doesn't want to do it.
No.
All you have to do, because it's also habitual, so you can't just blame yourself. Like I'm a dumb idiot who's craving negative
No, it's
news.
a fucking poker machine.
Yeah. So if you literally put it across the room, and what I do is I put it on airplane mode. So when I have the sleep in my eyes in the morning, I'm reminded of, wait a second, I did this for a reason. And then I put it on, so I'm not like bombarded by like notifications.
But you're a news junkie, right?
Not anymore, man.
Yeah.
Like now, I still follow political people on Twitter, and I'm afraid to unfollow them. So they're gonna be like, "Oh, fucking new alt-right Kilstein, unfollow me." And I'm like, "No, you just make me sad." So I'm really not anymore. Like I've put everything into professional wrestling. No, I've put everything into just trying to be like present and like more human, and that it's not conducive.
Does Trump make you nostalgic for the good old days of George Bush?
Of George Bush, yeah, right. I think I tried that. Oh, I did have a joke. I think I tried to do a joke like that. It didn't work. Where I was like, "Yeah, do you ever think you'd pine for 9/11?" Like,
Yeah, man.
like, Jesus Christ.
What do you think? Where do you think all this is going? You think this is you think he's gonna leave willingly?
You know, man, I don't care.
Really?
I of course, like, I care about certain issues and people being hurt. I think it's really, really horrible that even though I think that Trump is a con man, he has empowered all of these sort of like closeted fascists to like come to the surface. If I ever see somebody being bullied or hurt, I will fight. I'll fight. And whenever I know someone's struggling, I always write them back online. Again, I try to be friendly to everybody. If I don't have change, I am absolutely still making eye contact and saying hi to the homeless person. Like, all that shit, right? Which, by the way, I never did because I was on my phone all the time, like, scrolling for justice. But I'm also like, well, what role can I play, right? What is tweeting "fuck you Nazis" going to do besides get me a bunch of likes? Well, it's not going to change a Nazi's mind, right? But what I can do is I can talk about like the things that I think that my side did to like lead here, you know, which is what we talked about like on the show. I think that a lot of moderates are being driven to the right because they're sort of sick of the left. I think that the left is far too reactionary. What I try to do on my podcast too is something that I could never do on my old show, which is talk about like masculinity in a good way. Like my Instagram, like, and it's funny whenever like, so like all the comics I went on tour with like started following me on Instagram. So I'm nervous to post my like earnest stuff or like went to the gym. You know what I mean? Because like Cashman in a fucking like just perfectly worded rage was probably making fun of me in his head. But I did today because I also, you know, back in the day, if I had someone write me that I saved his life because his doctor said if he didn't lose weight, he was going to die, and he had kids. And I guess
you fat shamed him.
And I said, you motherfucker, piece of shit. You and your fat fucking kids. I wrote him back personally, and I found him a jiu-jitsu gym in his neighborhood, and sent him a bunch of recipes and shit like that. So he writes me back, and we read it on the show. And he's like, I'm entering my first like white belt jiu-jitsu competition. I lost 80 pounds. My kids are so proud of me. My doctor said he's never seen anything like this. And I read it, and I'm like almost in tears because my whole shitty life, like I at least feel like it's like helping people. And the next day we got like 10 emails saying that we were fat shaming them.
Wow.
Now, I didn't say everybody therefore has to do jiu-jitsu. I was like just reading this kid's triumphant story, and that was the moment where I think I mentally checked out because I was just like,
you have to.
You fucks would rather this guy die than you temporarily feel a little bad for yourself.
Yeah.
Or, God forbid, make a really hard change, which like I have struggled with food issues. I have been overweight. It's hard and it sucks, but use that kid's story as inspiration instead of being like, I'd rather him orphan his fucking kids so that I can eat shitty for a little longer or not go to the gym. And so now I don't know the scandal of the day. I don't know what the fuck is happening with Russia. I don't give a shit. But I can talk about shit that I never used to talk about before because I think that a bunch of especially young men, I mean, I think my show is still like mostly women just by a little bit, but like young men, like they don't have people on the left talking about masculinity and talking about like you can be honorable, you can still try to be a gentleman, and that doesn't mean you're sexist. But most importantly, like you can be tough, you can get your shit together. That's why this guy Jordan Peterson and all these like more alt-right guys are so popular because
we had an argument about Peterson the other day with someone.
So I'll cut it in the middle where
no, I'm in the middle.
We're in the middle.
Okay, great. Me too. So politically, I don't agree with almost anything he has to say. However, the first time I listened to him, it really helped me.
He's a very fucking bright man.
He's a very bright man, and it really helped me. And it
like
was
a lot of intelligent people has some things to say that are relevant.
And it was simple shit that he said. And like literally like make your bed, walk confidently, like pick your own shit up. And
Pat a cat.
Yeah, and that shit helped me a lot, right? But here's what happens is because no one on the left is saying that to young men, all these young men, including myself, who is 36, see that and they go, wow, I've never had a fucking guy say that to me. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Then YouTube, because he is considered alt-right, goes, hey, if you like Jordan Peterson, you'll love Ben Shapiro fucking pissing on a poor person.
Yeah.
And so then they go down there. And by the way, like, I had a phase where I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to like Ben Shapiro now. Like, he retweeted something that like I wrote, and I'm like, all right. And I looked into it. I'm like, no, man, I'm still liberal. Like, I don't agree with you. But a lot of 17-year-old boys who are hearing this shit for the first time and who are hearing like pick your shit up instead of being a sad sack on Twitter and saying you need another self-care day, which by the way, self-care really important, but I feel like the left on Twitter are only our biggest tool, at least when I was like active on it, is be sad, get attention.
Yeah, and
play
these,
victim.
I just want to say one thing because I was looking at a lecture that Jordan Peterson did, which was about history and about the Bible. Like it was just about a parable Bible and what it may have meant, like theorizing meaning, nothing political. And then it was like, now you've watched this, you may be interested in, and it was the most heinous shit. Like it was just like, holy fuck! Like if people saw this, they would think, yeah, it's the same as Sam Harris.
You like Sam Harris? Well, you're like Alex Jones.
Yeah, and it's like, no. But if you're a young man who doesn't know what he likes and is trying to find his camp, and you watch a Sam Harris thing, and then you're like, oh, maybe I am in that crew.
I can tell you, as someone who now I also had this sort of like was rebelling against the people who don't like me anymore, but like I 100% had that phase. But by the way, I'm like really glad I started listening to Sam Harris.
Oh, he's the fucking best.
He tweeted that article I wrote for Quillette because he's like,
I saw that he retweeted you the other day.
He was as someone who has been on the other side of Jamie Kilstein's Twitter outrage, like I'm glad he's whatever. But like, and guess what? There's stuff he says that I disagree with, and guess what?
And there's nothing fucking wrong with that.
There's a lot of stuff he says that I agree with.
Yeah,
and I have noticed that I haven't become more conservative since listening to more like Rogan or Harris or whatever, but I am infinitely more empathetic. And by the way, like I think I'm becoming more intelligent because now I'm hearing what the other side has to say and I get to choose for myself whether I agree or I now know how to debate it because I'm like challenging myself. And when I was in the echo chamber, I was essentially like, well, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Well, all right, retweet. And that was it.
Well, the art of debating is gone.
It's gone. I mean,
people won't debate things at all anymore, which I think is really sad because. Yeah,
when Steve Bannon was disinvited to the New Yorker Festival.
Yeah.
It's like, I think, Harris talks about that a lot, but I think Remnick would have smoked him.
Of course.
And I think it would have been fucking fascinating.
It would have been interesting, and it's gone now.
We have a fucking person presenting us tonight. Your head will not explode. You will not get cancer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I used to get into fights with born-again Christians all the time when I was a teenager, when I still cared about that kind of shit. And, you know, when I hit 20, I was like, you know what? I'm going to fucking read the Bible cover to cover, just so I know what I'm fucking debating.
Yeah.
So that I'm not just like, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
You know, like the number of times I've been like said, I really enjoy Sam Harris's podcast and people are like, oh, he's a fucking bigot. And it's like, oh, cool. Have you ever listened to Sam Harris's podcast? No. Why would I do that?
But it's the same
Here's how you know it's good, is he gets equal shit from the right for going after Trump and for the left for being like Islamophobic or whatever. And like,
and he's not Islamophobic. He's anti-bad cultural trends.
Yeah. And
you know what? Cutting off clits, not a great idea.
not great.
And that should not
As
be
a lady, I agree.
And that should not be a fucking
I'll go back in the closet.
That should not be a controversial statement. I've seen fucking people arguing for clitorectomies and how dare you criticize clitorectomies? That is their culture.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. If that's the fucking culture of cutting off a clit, I'm going to criticize it. That's a fucking shit.
And then, by the way, then the right wing goes, well, that's how fucking dumb the left is, where they won't even criticize this stuff. And then that's how they get more of those moderates and more of those independents over there. You know, like I used to be the loud atheist too. And like I had a show that was literally called like There's No God, because I read like one Christopher Hitchens book. And now like I moved to LA and I think it's like legally required to be like spiritual. So I'm like, it's not that I'm like suddenly like believe in God, but I'm like, I don't care if you do as long as you're a good person. Atheism, like, fuck, man. I'm like, there are really great atheists, but there are also probably really great religious people. I feel like atheists are like the families that like hand out like apples at Halloween, where it's like, I guess you're right, but everyone fucking hates you. You know what I mean? Like you want someone to be like, why don't I want candy? It's just like, read Richard Dawkins. Like I don't know. Like it's so.
We work with a few very, very devout Christians, and they are three of the best people I have ever met in my life. They are wonderful human beings. Well, you know what I mean? If you have there's a you know that Bill Maher documentary, Religulous. Yeah. You know, and I love Bill Maher, and I love him because a lot of the time he says stuff I don't agree with, or that I find problematic or whatever.
But interesting.
But he's interesting, and he has discourse, and he's willing to talk to people.
He had Bannon on after the New Yorker.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's a scene in Religulous, and I can't stand this scene. He's at a truck stop chapel, and he's talking to these dudes that fucking drive trucks 23 hours a day, and he's standing behind the pew going like, you guys are smarter than this. You don't need this. And it's like, bro, you're a fucking millionaire living in LA who smokes weeds and gets to hang out with the most intellectual people on earth. Yeah. You know what? If this book makes their fucking life that much fucking easier. Their shitty life driving trucks.
Yeah.
Let them fucking have it.
How about the fucking people who like when there's a natural disaster, like a hurricane or something, and some poor victim, some like old black lady who just lost her fucking house and her dog's like swimming and like away somewhere. And she says like, I just believe God has a plan. And they're like, you fucking idiot. You stupid bitch. Fucking dumb. There's no God. Yeah. Like here's a Richard Dawkins book for your dog to float on. Like, it's just like, go do something, assholes. Like, go fucking get a boat and do something. Because instead of just making fun of her. And again, like, I mean, I never did that, but I'm just I don't know if it's the age, I don't know if it's just that I've lost everything, where it's just like, I just want to be around nice people. And
but I think also with the atheist thing, it's like you must get to a point in life where you realize, for me, agnosticism is really the only rational point of view. Correct. I don't fucking know. Yeah. I'm a monkey. I have no fucking idea how the universe works. Probably nothing happens. Probably we're just a fucking weird fluke of nature on a mote of dust in infinity. But I don't know.
What are you talking about? Be positive.
But there is a positivity in that.
No, there's
a real freedom in that.
And it's also like, live your best life now, right? But I'm the same. Sorry, you.
I was just going to say, I don't know if it's an age thing either, but I feel similarly, where I feel like I've cut out a lot of that internet crap and I'm really satisfied with day-to-day stuff. And what I was going to ask is if you guys think that's a way that people will swing. Like if we're going to be so suffocated by the bullshit and the onslaught of just this fucking never-ending everything, because I am much happier if I don't engage with reading the news on my phone.
I think it's actually happening now. I think that's why, even though Sam Harris and Rogan are very political, these are two of the most like political, quote unquote, bro-y people, and they spend the majority of time talking about like mindfulness, and like Sam Harris has a meditation app and stuff like that. I think the reason that yoga is blowing up, I think the reason that meditation is blowing up, I think the reason that mindfulness, that all these meditation apps, all this stuff, is because I think it is a subconscious rebellion against that sort of social media culture you're talking about.
Because we're not wired to deal with this.
I feel like it's creeping in more and more, like little things, like people be like, I'm doing learning how to pot plant on the weekend, or people are going to markets to buy fruit and vegetables or presents instead of the supermarket because it makes them feel like they're more in touch. Like there's these little things that are creeping in that I like because I feel happier.
But what's interesting is I used to, and my crew and people still, you say, oh, once they become older, suddenly they become like more conservative or
is it an older thing?
Or they care less or whatever. And I'm like, all right, if that's what's happening to me, like, cool. That just means like I'm more intelligent. I've like lived more. Like I'm fine with that. I think the goal should always be like, if what you are doing enables you to be a better person and make people happier, then and that's another thing with social media culture that I realize is you think you're like fighting for like other people so much, and a lot of these like even like the really like well-meaning activists and shit, they don't take time for themselves. So you'll see like tweets of indignation, and then suddenly like one day it's just like, I locked myself in the basement for a day because I couldn't take it anymore. You're like, Jesus Christ, you're gonna kill yourself. Where there's such burnout. And I don't think that like, again, I've seen people and I've done this where it's just like, I need another self-care day to like watch Netflix. And it's like, all right, you don't need to tweet about that. But I do think that like ever since I've started spending infinitely more time on myself, and like your listeners, like even the not political ones, let's say you're in a relationship and again you think you're being this great partner by only doing what they want to do as you silently build a hatred for your partner. That's not good. You need to miss them. You need to be able to have your own activities and know who you are as a person. I didn't know who I was as a person. I what I just realized is one of the reasons that I'm wrestling is because it was what me and my brothers grew up on. And then I was on the left, where if you talked about wrestling, you were an idiot. And I already thought I was dumb because I was the dick joke guy around a bunch of journalists, and I dropped out of high school. And, just remembered this, where sometimes when like my wife would be asleep, I would just go on like the WWE website and just see who I wouldn't even watch clips. I would just like see it was so weird. It happened like once a year.
Just hide in the bathroom watching wrestling.
And what I realized is that a lot of who I am just went away for a little bit, and I think you still have time to rediscover that. Like if you're 40 and like misplaying the cello from high school, like you can play the cello, you can run, you can get in shape, you can like it seems so change is so hard, and it seems so starting change is so hard, but once you start and once you actually start to feel the positive ramifications from it, man, it's so massive, and it makes you better towards everyone else. You think that you're being selfless by like, I'm just a people pleaser. I just have to make everyone happy, and I just want. But in reality, like you're not. It's artificial at worst, and at best, it's unsustainable.
Yeah, it is unsustainable.
One of the best bits of advice I've ever been given is. There's a reason on airplanes they say fix your own oxygen mask before you help anyone else.
You know who I heard say that? Tony fucking Robbins.
There you go. It's true, but it's fucking true, man.
I've been following that guy for so long, literally didn't even know what he looked like. But it's huge.
He's a fucking weird-looking motherfucker.
He's a weird-looking guy.
I think it's a backing
positive, and he was like, I don't look weird. I'm handsome.
I think it's a backing away from the tech is very important. You know, like
sorry, just really one thing. When you were saying, Jamie, about how spending more time on your interests and things, that also happens once you cut out the amount of time you can get sucked out of your life by being online looking through vapid shit. So when you were like, you have time to pursue those things, I got rid of a bunch of apps on my iPad and my phone, and all of a sudden I was like, there was so many times I'd pick it up and go to look at something, and I was like, why am I trying to look at that?
You don't even want to.
I don't even give a fuck about that. But it's just this thing that was built in where it was like, I'm tired and brainless, boom. And I would automatically try and find it. And obviously, because I got rid of it, I would catch myself and go, okay, so what do I want to actually do in this moment?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much you can actually do.
I heard this guy on a podcast the other day who was like an expert in sort of like mindfulness shit or whatever. And he was like, even me, if I have my phone next to me, I will look at it. I will look at it. If I put it upstairs, I'm not like, there's something I have to check. Like it just stays. So I've started doing that. Like if I'm going to read a book, if my phone's next to me, I literally will just look over.
Oh, it's so bad.
And I leave it in the other room. Yeah, that stat of like how we like check Instagram, like I forget what the average is, but it's something like, it's over 100 times. It's like 165 times a day.
We check our phone with the fervor that Charlie Bucket opens Wonka bars. That like there's going to be something in there. There's the thing, the golden ticket. The golden ticket's going to.
I'll put my phone away, and when I put my phone away, start like judging of it. Look at all these people on their phones, and then my first thought is like, I'm going to tweet about it when I get home. Like just like such a piece where even like while judging them, I'm like, that'll be a good tweet.
Sorry, you go.
No.
One of my biggest fears going forward with just tech is, all this kind of fake video and fake audio that's going to start being very prolific.
What do you mean?
Like deep fakes, like where they can fake. There's a few videos of like Obama, but it's not Obama, and he's saying shit that basically anyone whose voice is on the internet for more than half an hour can basically be their voice can be put in a computer into an algorithm, and they can be made to say anything. And we're going to get to this stage where you're not going to be able to trust anything you see or hear. I fear that
started like reading books again.
Yeah. I fear that more than anything. But conversely, there's this part of me that's like, maybe that's what'll kill the internet. Maybe that's what'll make everyone go, you know what? I can't fucking trust anything anymore. So let's go back to the only thing I can trust is this right now. I'm talking to you guys. I'm looking in your eyes. I'm looking in your eyes. I know that you're a human, and this is real.
Yeah.
I think people are looking for things that are tangible like that. Like, on a minor scale, when people go shopping, more and more and more, even in like big chain supermarkets, they're like, these eggs come from there. Yeah. It's like a farm. You don't know the farm, but it makes you feel better because you're like, oh.
There's a picture of a farm.
Yeah, there's a picture of a farmer. When the strawberry thing happened.
What?
And people are like, oh, there's strawberries from that farm in New South Wales, and it's okay now. It's like they're looking for that kind of comfort.
Well, I also think that when we were talking about like mindfulness and all that stuff becoming more popular as like a rebellion, I also think that's why podcasts are so popular.
Yeah.
Because it's just human beings with complicated thoughts talking to each other. I mean,
nuance.
Yeah.
And you take it in differently to TV, in that you're still able to do things and you're able to process it in a different way than if it's on
like
screen.
I'll go when I take walks and
Me
I
too,
listen
yeah.
to
And
it.
something directly into your head is very intimate.
Yeah.
And I listen to like a lot of like self-improvement shit and like just like people I respect talking about like, again, being flawed and stuff like that. And it really, really helps. I was going to say something else about this. No, guys, I've been on a plane every day for like the last.
We were talking about.
I'm sure it was very deep and profound.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was that.
Okay. But yeah,
I also can tell you guys had a fight today because you're both being so sweet to each other. Where you're like, "Were you gonna say something?" No, you
I
gonna say
know,
something.
we're
It's like
back.
classic great podcast hosts where it's just like,
No, it's a fight that had been building for weeks.
We
Where
were
just
both
lack of
tense.
communication. You know,
and I became
that's everything.
his mom, and he became my dad. It was complicated.
Because that links back into what we were talking about earlier. You know,
Yeah.
that regression into childhood, and that's what we discovered on the phone. We
Crazy.
talked on the phone for
Became
an hour
very
today
complicated.
Yeah.
because it had been building and building. I mean, and me and Jen have known it. God, how long?
Ages,
Fucking
10 years or something. I don't know.
You know, that was the discovery. It was like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm doing stuff that's making her regress into a little girl, and she's doing stuff that's making me regress into a little boy.
I can tell we're older because if it happened like a few years ago, I'd be like, "Fuck you!" You
dude,
the beer bottle.
Oh, we would have like yelled
Dude,
at each
I
other.
woke up this morning and I was like, I'm canceling the podcast.
I know.
I'm quitting my job. The fucking friendship is over.
And I
Fuck
knew.
you.
Yeah.
In my head, I knew as well. And when I called him, I had to call him while I was driving, which is such a dick move because I fucking hate when people do that. I feel like it's a power move, like someone who's running, like, I'm just on a jog calling you. Like, it's such a cunt thing to do. But anyway, I called because I had like 2 minutes and he's like, I can't hear you. And I was like, I'll call you back. And you went, when? And I was like, oh, he's so fucking angry. Like, if
Because in my mind,
if
it's
I
like.
fuck up the timing of when I call him back,
No, because
I
when
was
I-
like, 10 minutes, 15, fuck, 20. No.
As soon as I heard the tone of your voice, I was.
believe me.
I'm so sorry.
As soon as I heard the tone of your voice, I knew it was going to be okay because my little boy
was so
head is like,
anxious.
Mum is going to give me the silent treatment for a week.
Right.
And that's my expectation. It's
Yeah, and I was
like, oh, here
like-
we fucking go.
I mean, but-
here we fucking go.
I was like, I'm
how
gonna get
huge
yelled
is
at.
that for like the people listening where it's like, you know, I mean, this is a relationship of sorts, right? But it's like so many times if we don't confront the issue, we make it as bad as you can get.
Oh, totally.
Every time I'm like, this person fucking hates me or I'm gonna get fired. If I don't hear back from a club, I'm like, they fucking cuckolded me. I'm not gonna get the gig. I mean, this is was my day to day. I mean, I'm really working on it. And then usually when you just go for it and you talk, which takes vulnerability, it takes putting your ego on check, it takes listening and figuring out the role you played in it. But god damn it, like it is so cathartic when like the second I saw you guys together, I'm like, oh, these guys are best friends and I'm gonna have so much fun on this podcast.
Oh, thank God.
And it's but that's huge, especially that happened today, where it's like, yeah, dude, just like fucking put your ego away, and just be like, hey, here's this dumb shit I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And it's probably from this, but like, can you not do that or whatever?
It is very rare in life to approach someone and go, hey man, I was acting like a real fucking dick. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And, you know, have the other person not go, it's fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that is not a widely known fact.
Oh, and by the way, if that person is like doubles down and tries to rub it in your face and whatever, then maybe that friendship isn't right. And maybe you were right. And maybe you need to walk away, and that's all right too. You know, when you were talking about, you said something that made me think about this. I think it was just the negativity of the news, but also like getting rid of toxic people in your life is fucking massive.
Yeah.
Like when I suddenly, it's not like I'm going around like fucking saying horrible things, but when I realize that like when I hang out with comics and I'm just like, oh, I can just be funny. I can just go for the joke without having to apologize or second guess myself. Or I can tell some of my dreams without them shitting on it. Or I can say that I got a really big gig without worrying that my partner is going to be jealous instead of supportive. And you cut those people out. I mean, to be honest, the main reason that I'm not in a relationship is I've come close a couple of times, but like I really, and I think it's to make up for the mean shit, I really want someone who's just like not naively positive, not fake positive, but just like, let's fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Like, let's make something like badass together, or let's support each other. And that's really what I want. And there's so much negative bullshit. And it's so easy for people who aren't happy with their lives, instead of being like, oh, I'm going to make my life better.
Yeah.
Which again, appeal of like Jordan Peterson and people like that, of just going, well, I'm just gonna fucking be like a little shitty to everyone else who is trying to make their life better. And when you can get rid of one of those toxic people, two of them, all of them, get a new partner, whatever, it helps immensely.
And how good does it feel to know what you're looking for?
It's huge.
Like,
I never had before.
Me
I was
too.
looking for somebody.
My relationship now, I knew what I was looking for. Prior to that, I was kind of like bouncing. Had a great time.
Yeah.
But there's a few fuck ups along the way. But it's really satisfying to be like, yeah, cool. Like, I feel like I know how to be a better human being.
But you are.
Yeah.
You are more whole than in any other time I've ever
I'm
known
way healthier.
No, but I'm talking like just, as, and just talking to you now, like from the last time, it was years ago, like 5-6 years ago.
And here's what's interesting too. I was technically very successful and rich then.
Yeah. And you were
a shittier person.
Well, yeah. Well, from my perspective, you just seemed, in contrast to now, you were a husk. Whereas now you feel you are a filled out dude, and you're a real guy. And I feel, I'm not saying that you weren't then, but
no, I mean there were glimpses
in contrast to now.
Yes,
in contrast to now, you seem happy.
Yeah,
and you seem open-hearted, and inclusive and happy. And...
It was so interesting because like Rogan and Stanhope's were the first shows I did after like being gone for a year, and that was the comment I got the most from people, was just like, "Man, you look really happy," and I was super nervous on Rogan's for a million reasons. And I was talking about the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I was homeless and I had no money and all this stuff. And there's something so huge about that, where it's like, man, when I had everything, technically, I was miserable. And this is the cliche that you hear, but I can tell you as someone who like still is not where I want to, nor am I gonna, but I know what I want, but I'm not close to that. I'm really making this fucking Comedy Store per diem last. I'm like, it was wild where I'm like, fuck, man, with nothing, this is the best version of me I've ever been. And like, that's a massive realization. But whenever people like, you guys didn't do it, but usually when I do podcasts, like, when you have a comic, you're like, you've seen this guy on Conan or heard him on like the Joe Rogan Experience. All of my introductions are like so morose, or like, this guy's been through a lot.
We haven't done it yet.
He's overcome. Yeah.
We dragged him in. No.
He was kicking and screaming. But
what were you going to say about Doug?
No, I was going to say Benny came out of a bit of a toxic relationship and he was low, but everyone was like, oh my God, like you look amazing.
Yeah, immediately.
Because
even when you don't feel
I've never been more depressed.
Clear.
And
like I never felt more depressed, but everyone was like, whoa, you look like you've lost like fucking 40 kilos.
Because you were depressed, but you were still...
You're like, I was so sad I wasn't eating.
But you were still in a much better, healthier state than you were before you had left that relationship.
I was depressed, but I didn't have that like hair trigger. Oh, fuck.
Anxiety.
You were circumstantially depressed because a sad thing happened.
Yes.
Because you broke up, as opposed to permanently scarred and going down a path of like...
Yeah, like a Burns victim around an open flame.
That's what the last girl I was dating, I think... one of my friends, like a girlfriend, came up to me and was like, hey, and went to put her hand on my shoulder, and I kind of like turned
pulled
away
back.
And she was just like, yo, were you doing that because of your ex? And I was like, oh fuck, I guess. Well, either that or I'm also very, God, I have never shaken more women's hands because of like what was said about me. It's a lot of my manager, when we met up, he's like, does it affect you, like what was like said about you? And I'm like, I don't think so. And then I paused and I was like, I do call girls buddy a lot. Like, a lot. Like, that is like my go-to.
Hey, man.
I had like, dude, I've used hey, man. I use dude a lot.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
You know, like I became conscious many years ago.
No, but I had two like girls that like wanted to date me. They're like, "Hey, can you stop fucking calling me buddy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, word."
But I mean, many years ago, I stopped, doing the kind of obligatory hug and kiss on the cheek of a woman that I don't know that well. Because it's like, well, if I was a woman, I don't want every fucking dude that I don't know kissing me on the fucking cheek.
Dude, now
so
that
I'll
I'm
fist bump you, or I'll fucking shake your hand, or whatever.
Bump you.
Well, whatever it is. But it's just like,
clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Well, I went to, I went out with the boys, the comics. We went to this like kind of like, when like there's like such a trashy place, you're like, this will be funny, but everyone like secretly wants
strip
to go.
joint.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even a strip club, but it was like a trashy like bar where people just go to like fuck. It had like levels. It was called like Gilligan's. It was like, and I forget where it was, but we went and I was sober. And yeah, this kind of older woman like leaned in for a kiss, and I like being sober is really interesting because I was just like, ugh, like I just kind of like had to like move away, as opposed to like if I was drunk, I'd be like, yeah, fuck it,
let's roll the dice, baby.
Yeah. But I was like, this is what women feel like. But yeah, it was really interesting just being sober and be like, oh yeah, I don't like this. And if I go for a handshake and a girl wants to hug me, cool.
Yeah, of course. But just that kind of assumed obligatory, like, no, this is how men and women interact, even if they don't know each other.
Yeah,
it's just
firm smack on the ass and
squeeze of the tit.
Yeah, the squeeze of the tit.
Squeeze of the tit.
Oh man, this has been fucking great,
guys. I'm like legitimately this is like a big deal. I pretty much was like, well, I need to do at least one podcast to promote this show, and now I'm just like, I'm a better man, and I have friends.
I'm so glad that you came on. Honestly, it's so fucking great, and it's so great to see you.
I could do more hours if I wasn't just crashing so hard.
No, I feel like we've solved all of the world's problems
through our fuck-ups. Yeah.
What do you want to plug?
I have a podcast called the Jamie Kilstein Podcast, which is free on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify. And we talk about all this stuff. And yeah, like, it's cool. Like, I talk about some of the, like, middle ground politics stuff we talked about. But, like, when I had Moby on, we just talked about, like, being insecure in relationships and The Simpsons. And, like, I've had, like, UFC fighters on. And, like, I don't ask them stuff that you'd have to be a fight fan to know about. Like, I talk about, like, ego and, like, I try to now just make it shit I want to. I'm going to have wrestlers on, of course, because that's what I want to do. And I'm not going to ask about like pay-per-views, but I'm going to ask them about like what it is to be a grown-ass man in fucking spandex. Like, like seriously, like, and what was that like telling your parents? Like, I mean, and shit like that. Like stuff that hopefully everyone can kind of relate to. So
humanizing.
So I'm proud of the podcast. I mean, I've been, this is such a bad plug. I've been tempted to, dude, my old show used to make a fuck ton of money and I would be fighting on Twitter and like getting new fans that way. And it's been tempting where I'm like, this is when I stopped being political under Trump. Like I've always picked the wrong direction. Like post 9/11, I was just like, fuck the government. And now everyone's like, fuck Trump. And I'm like, hey, let's all talk.
You must choose the happiness, man.
Yeah, you have to.
So a fuller and wholer person.
Yeah. So like the people who have found the podcast really, really like it. And we're starting to build a cool community. It's just, it's going to take a bit longer than if I was like calling people cunts on Twitter. But yeah, it's the Jamie Kilstein podcast.
Longer than too.
And then Twitter's Jamie Kilstein. Instagram is Jamie Kilstein Podcast.
Jamie Kilstein. Thanks so fucking much.
Thank you so much.
You guys so much.